Hi, Site Conference attendees. My name is Dr. Tori Trust, and I teach in the College of Education at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. I'm going to talk with you briefly today about critical concerns with emergency remote teaching, privacy, accessibility, and the digital divide. As educators across the country and around the world have been tasked with shifting their in-person classes to online or remote learning, educators are turning to digital tools and apps to enrich and extend their teaching and provide learning experiences for students at a distance. However, this rapid shift and dive into new digital tools and apps raises some critical concerns that we need to keep in mind as teacher educators. First and foremost is privacy and security. Most digital tools and apps are collecting data. This might be location data, IP address, personally identifiable information such as email address, date of birth, or name, and browser and device data. This data might be shared and sold to other companies who use it to create a profile, or it might be used by the EdTech tool itself to develop advertising that fits within the app. Some tools can be easily hacked, and this means that student data might be leaked, and this might violate student privacy. Or tools could be hacked in ways that share obscene or harmful content, such as with Zoom bombing, when video conferences go wrong. This is a term that you might now be familiar with given what's going on across the country and the increased use of Zoom. Hackers are targeting Zoom and diving in and sharing racist comments and obscene and harmful images. As teachers and teacher educators, when we use new digital tools and apps, we need to look closely at the privacy policy, we need to look closely at the features available, and we need to do our best to provide safe and private learning experiences. A report found that more than half of Android apps for children are in violation of COPPA, which is a law that supports and protects children under 13 years old and prevents companies from collecting information from these children. You may have seen YouTube was recently sued because it was collecting information from children under 13 years old and using that information to generate advertisements for those children, which is in stark violation to COPPA. This was a recent article that popped up regarding the use of a location app where an individual used an app to track his bike route. You may be using an app like that to track your jogging or walking route. This individual was put at the scene of a crime because he rode 3 laps around this neighborhood, and each time the location data that was collected about him was sent to a location data company that curates all that information and handed it over to the authorities, which then noted that he was close to the location of the scene of the crime at the time that it occurred and put him as a suspect of the crime, even though he had never gone to the house or met the individual at the house. And he was panicked because he was just using this app to track his biking location. So when thinking about tools and apps, we need to ensure that we are protecting the privacy and security of students. We don't want students in situations like this where they are using digital tools and apps we ask them to use, but it's collecting location data about them that might be shared with authorities. And thinking about privacy and security, first and foremost, read the privacy policy and terms of service of every tool that you use. I know that it takes a while to do, and often we just want to click accept and download right away, but it is important to see what data and information the tool is collecting, how it's using it, whether it's sharing it and selling it, and what that means for your own and your students' privacy. Work with school and university IT staff to review and select tools and apps, ideally using tools that IT staff have already selected for use, because that means likely they have worked with the tool developer to create a contract that protects student safety and security. Using school single sign-on, such as logging in with a school Gmail address, will also provide better protections for students rather than having them use their individual or personal accounts. Also, learning from other educators about their experiences with the tool. Get connected, join online communities, see how other educators are learning about and using these tools. For example, Zoom bombing popped up right early on in some of the educator networks around emergency remote teaching. And it was something I quickly learned about and shared with my colleagues. The more we are connected, the more we can learn from one another and better protect our students. And of course, notifying students or their parents or guardians about the potential risks of using new tools and apps and providing alternative options as needed. The next thing we need to keep in mind is accessibility. Educators and school leaders have legal obligations to ensure that all students, including students with disabilities, can access online and virtual programs. Across the board, most ed tech tools are not accessible, so when you're asking students to use new digital tools and apps, it's important to review the accessibility features of those tools or provide students with alternative options so that they can engage in learning in an equitable way. When you are creating your own materials or using materials created by others, take a look and find out whether they are accessible or could be made more accessible. For example, if you're making video-based lectures or assigning YouTube videos, look closely at the closed captions. Are they accurate? Are they 100% accurate? Not like 60% accurate. Students who are deaf or hard of hearing depend on those closed captions, as do students who are English language learners can benefit from reading the closed captions. So the more you make things accessible and use accessible materials in your class, the better it will be for everyone. With audio files, making sure you have a transcript. And this may seem like a lot of extra work, but sometimes you can hand that work off to students as a learning experience. They can write closed captions for a video, or they can make transcripts for audio files. With your own Google Docs or Word documents or slides, making sure that you do a quick review of what is available out there. Google and Microsoft both provide articles to help you make your materials more accessible, such as using headers, making sure your links, like the links in this slide right here, are descriptive rather than written out as http dot backslash backslash blah, 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 blah. That's too long for the screen readers to read out. So the more you can do for accessibility, the better. And quite frankly, educators are not trained well enough to evaluate the accessibility of digital tools and apps. This is something we as teacher educators need to do better with role modeling ourselves in our classrooms, but also with training future teachers, because we know situations like emergency remote teaching may arise again in the future. And then the digital divide. One of the things I've been disappointed to see is that schools and districts across the country are banning and restricting teaching to ensure equity. Unfortunately, that will likely exacerbate the digital divide. Students who go home to families where the parents are home full-time and can homeschool them, or they have siblings or grandparents who can homeschool them, are going to continue learning. Or even students who have access to digital tools and quality Wi-Fi are likely going to learn and explore on their own, where students who really depend on school as their sole learning experience, but don't have access to school because it's banned or restricted, will be even more vulnerable without that opportunity to learn, and the digital divide will expand even more. Rather than ban or restrict teaching, we need to support, train, and encourage educators to be creative in the way they design remote learning experiences, using the Universal Design for Learning principles as a guide for designing learning experiences that give students multiple ways to access content, multiple ways to engage with the content, and multiple ways to show their knowledge. By providing multiple means of action expression, multiple means of representation, and multiple means of engagement, we are increasing access to learning for all students, rather than limiting learning or banning learning in times of need. To wrap up, I want to share that my students and I are wrapping up the design of a new open access book on Dr. Royce Kimmon's EdTech Books site called Teaching with the Digital Tools and Apps, where we have chapters focused on evaluating cost, privacy, and data, as well as evaluating accessibility and a few other chapters. I hope you will check it out. It should be launched by the end of April. It's on edtechbooks.org, and you will have open access to use that in your classroom. I really think that privacy, accessibility, and digital divide are such important concerns as we make this shift to emergency remote teaching, something we need to be role modeling in our own class, having discussions about, and better preparing future teachers to think about how can they teach with digital tools and apps in remote and online learning situations.